A temple on an island, it is night and there is a natural warm hue due to firelight. Zahos Dal takes the enviros into a private lesson and Maven looks furious. She waits until later to confront Zahos alone and after a heated debate, Maven accidentally kills him in rage. Valera Genel finds the scene and attacks Maven, along with others that join in. The firelight spills and lights the temple on fire as they continue to fight and Maven kills others in self-defense. Eventually, Valera is force-pushed into the waters and Maven runs. The last scene is Maven in the distance running away from a burning temple. Title crawl for the movie. A Star Destroyer flies overhead akin to OG openings and reveals Rhea, the planet of interest for the movie. A Lambda shuttle departs the destroyer and heads for the capital city, Thera. There, two Inquisitors meet with local authorities, formerly House Nion forces. They explain that Maven turned herself in and spoke of Jedi traitors. After Hand Ashford speaks with Maven, she and her apprentice Carvos go on the hunt for the renegades. We cut to the temple in the morning. The fire is out and significant damage was created but the temple is not destroyed. Valera Genel is angry but Jex Vru takes charge and gets everyone to calm. In this scene we meet Eleanor Rose and Raiden Mavis, whose father died by Maven's hands. TIE bombers come in from the horizon and drop a payload on the temple. Jex Vru orders Ellie to take the young and make for the boats. The few older Force users remain and begin using the Force to bring the bombers down as they passed over a second time. The two hunters would arrive with Death Troopers and a fight would take place. Jex Vru would duel Ashford and Carvos as Valera went from behind the enemy and stole their dropships, and would pick up Eleanor and the young, attempting to fly off. Imperial fighters would pursue as Jex Vru held his own against Ashford as Carvos was force pushed into a wall and knocked out. After a sustained duel, Jex would disarm Ashford but not go for a finishing kill as he was surrounded by Imperials. Instead, he would surrender as the only one left alive at the scene. Cut to the dropship flying frantically as it reached the northern landmass of Oraz. They would see what was a meteor shower in the distance and would fly into it for cover from the fighters. The dropship is hit by metal debris and ended up crashing on the surface. Eleanor would help Raiden and the others rush off. Valera would tell them to head for the Pion coast as she activated her lightsaber and prepared to fight off the Imperials landing in the distance. The movie follows the young as they head east and we see blaster fire in the background amongst the wreckage. We get a scene, a memory, of the marriage between Kento Nion and Kari Juna Leon Kostiva, a very beautiful ritual and as the pair kiss the Kento of modern times wakes up, damaged as he survived the crash of the Haven medical station that fell from orbit. Kento would recover his lightsaber and would get out of the station to see Valera fighting too many Imperial stormtroopers. Kento would walk into view of everyone and activate his green lightsaber. Cue a scene of Kento deflecting blaster bolts perfectly and saving Valera. They introduce themselves to one another and make their way east after the cohort. Catching up with Eleanor, she locates a village full of a people who trained with sticks. They seemed happy but, before she could do anything with her scouting mission, she would be arrested by a Mandalorian warrior and the young with her also captured and escorted into the village of Mandalorians. We cut to Jex Vru and Hand Ashford in an interrogation room. They have a very intelligent dialogue about the Jedi and Jex highlights how this covert is not Jedi, that they worship the cosmic force but also embrace their roles as warriors. Ashford gets frustrated with the lack of information on where the survivors are going and begins to torture the Jedi. She would come out of the room some time later and Carvos would show Ashford an image of Kento Nion. It would be known from this scene that Kento was thought dead. An Imperial officer would reveal that they had a trail on the Jedi. Kento Nion and Valera Genel would make it to the village and wouldn't hesitate to enter, sensing the Force users inside. They would be greeted by a Mandalorian and escorted to the covert leader, Rixum Vian. Rixum would hug Kento, as Kento's first apprentice. They would exchange stories about the Battle of Oricon and Kento would admit to surviving on a planet with Kari Lee for a time, happy but would reveal that she was gone now. As he talks about a war, the viewers are treated to quick screen flashes of the Valins with pole axes fighting Torn with Biscads. All of the Jedi would be reunited as Rixum stated he would have warriors escort them to the Pion Isles. He would also explain that more Imperial ships had arrived and that Mali Pion was resisting their takeover with military action. Suddenly, Imperial commandos would attack the Mandalorian village, and Carvos would have entered the battlefield. Rixum would get everyone to a Mandalorian transport as the village fell. Eleanor would catch a view of Maven Vyros with Carvos, and out of frustration would elect to stay at the location. With her saber, she would help the Mandalorians mount a defense and eventually came into a duel with Maven, where Eleanor expressed frustration, revealing that Zahos was her master. In the end, Mali would beat Eleanor and capture her. On their journey, Kento would speak with the recently orphaned Raiden and the pair would connect. They fly into the capital city of the Pion coast and would be greeted by Mali Pion and her royal guard. Kento and Rixum would take leadership roles and speak with Mali about the Empire. Moreover, that civilians were beginning to retaliate against the Imperial occupation. Kento would state that he could use it as cover to get into the city and rescue Jex Ru. Everyone would protest and Kento would reveal that he had a fleet of Valins evacuated from their homeworld and that they were heading here. Kento needed to warn them of the Empire. With more at stake, Rixum, Valera, and Mali would volunteer to go with Kento. They would use Rixum's Mandalorian shuttle. Raiden would stow away in the ship. Jex would be in his cell, meditating when Eleanor would be dragged in. Using torture of the pair, Eleanor would reveal that the Jedi were heading to the Pion Isles. Ashford would report this to Imperial Moff Eisen, states that he is an hour from arrival already. Valera would discover Raiden on the ship and the characters would all be frustrated with Raiden. When they landed, they told him to stay on the ship. Not long after they leave, Raiden follows them. Kento, Rixum, Mali, and Valera would sneak through the streets of Thera to the Capitol building and without a direct access inside, they would rush the front access with lightsabers. Getting inside quickly, they would split up and look for the location of Jex. Hunter Ashford would come face to face with Kento for the first time and the pair would exchange dialogue, exposition on the Manta uprising. They would engage in saber combat for the first time. This duel would be cut over concurrent events and near the end, Ashford would manage to get Kento's left eye with her saber. Raiden, who had followed, would save Kento from death but Ashford would sever his legs for interfering. Kento would hit with a powerful force blast and would drag Raiden out of the building. Concurrent, Valera Rixum would locate Jex and Eleanor, which was a surprise, and the pair would have to work as a team to get them out of the building alive, only to see the Mandalorian transport lift from the landed position without them, taking a missile to one of its engines as it flew off. This would be explained with a concurrent skirmish between Carvos and Mali. During this fight, he would reveal that Moff Eisen was on his way and he wasn't going to leave any part of the Pion house alive. She would create distance and run to the Mandalorian transport, flying off. Kento and Raiden would meet up with Rixum, Valera, Jex, and Eleanor and the number of them would be forced to steal a landspeeder and make for the city of Polaris. Imperial Sector Moff Eisen arrives in orbit and orders turbolasers of his fleet to focus fire on the Pion Isles. Mali Pion sees the green lasers fall from the skies and just makes the ridge to see the distant isles be bombarded from orbit. There would be no survivors. She would fall to her knees as the isles fell. Kento Nion and co would arrive at the city of Polaris and sneak past an Imperial FOB at the outskirts. Meeting with the mayor, Pink Hair Lady, she would offer medical aid to Raiden, Eleanor, and Jex. As the day transitioned and snow begun to fall from the sky, the fact that Kento Nion was from House Nion was beginning to attract civilian attention in the city of Polaris. Mali Person would arrive via Mount and would barely be able to tell everyone of the devastation the Empire had created. The city of Polaris would begin to arm themselves and would activate a city shield. Moff Eisen would arrive in Thera and would berate Ashford for losing her prisoners. He would learn of Kento and further that the city of Polaris was under a shield. He would order a large battle company to make for Polaris, ignoring complaints on the concurrent snowfall that was picking up. Raiden would wake up to see metal legs attached to him. Kento would calm him and ask him why he helped. After some time talking, Kento would reveal what happened to Kari Lee, showing the Battle of Kostiva and how she died in his arms to the viewer. Kento would express the pain in words to Raiden, but the viewers would see the fury of Kento spreading across the planet of Kostiva in the flashback as he committed genocide and caused the planet to become uninhabitable. They would be interrupted by sirens. The Battle of Polaris. Rixum and Valera would take whatever pilots they could and snub fighters and would evacuate to retake the Vikul village, to secure their Fang fighters and get Mandalorians in orbit before the Valin fleet arrived to their destruction. Meanwhile, Kento would take to the front lines with Ellie as Mali evacuated all of the injured. We meet Yella Arani, colonel of the Rhea local army. She would be a right hand for Kento in the Battle of Polaris as they held somewhat of a front lines against multiple AT-ATs and covered the evacuation. Kento and Eleanor versus Ashford and Carvos would transpire, and this time, Kento was more ferocious than before. Eleanor's rivalry with Carvos would begin here as they constantly taunted each other through the fight. Eventually, the front lines would get the all-clear signal and would retreat hard out of Polaris. It had been hours of fighting, and Moff Eisen would celebrate the victory as he had troopers searching the forests of Iamrella for the survivors. Kento Nion and Eleanor, along with the front lines and Yella, had met up with the evacuees and, using Diana's Cove, had gotten boats to the Kaliv Isles. They would all travel to the 9 crypts, and it had become a massive area of reprieve for those still alive. Around 8,000 troopers and 18,000 civilians. Kento would sense a powerful being connected to the Force and would ask Raiden to travel with him. The pair would have a Master Padawan-type adventure as they traveled the Kaliv Isles until they found a large canyon. Entering it together, they found a massive beast sleeping. This was a Kaliv dragon. A variant of the great crate dragon that evolved to have wings. Kento would tame the beast with the Force and would mount her with Raiden, taking to the skies. The evacuees would see Kento riding the thought-extinct Kaliv dragons, and that would inspire everyone to follow him as he called everyone to prepare to take back the planet from the Empire. Cutting to Vikul village, we see that Rixum and Valera had already freed the Mandalorians, and they were quickly donning their armor and preparing their fighters. Eleanor and Kento would spend the night together before the battle to come on the boats as they sailed for the south coast of Iamrella. The Battle for Rhea. We start the sequence aboard the Legacy Venator Bridge, meeting Oriana Lee Nyan for the first time and the Valins in real time. As they exit hyperspace, the Valin fleet is greeted to an Imperial blockade over Rhea. They sound alarms as they scramble the few snup fighters they have, and the Legacy begins to fire with its limited weaponry. Oriana takes to a fighter and leads the Starfighter assault, to be relieved by Mandalorian Fang fighters coming from the planet's surface, to aid in the battle. Then we transition to a holomap of the space battle as Moff Eisen looks over the rugged ships of the Valin fleet, mocking them. That's when they begin to hear chanting in the language of Rhea all throughout the city. As the Moff makes it out to see the skies, he witnesses the Kaliv dragon in the air as a snowstorm rolls in over the horizon, as well as a glow of firelight from the outskirts of the city. An army had them surrounded. He would call the battalion from Polaris to hard retreat, but would be informed that it would take some time. Jex Bruce stands with Yella Arani and Eleanor Rose as Mali Pion takes command as war chief and calls for the battle to begin, which would have fighting take place in the city streets of Rhea. Mandalorians from Clan Vikul would join the battle as well as it raged during the snowstorm. Ashford, Carvos, and Mali, now dressed the part, are ordered to defend the city. Various scenes of the battle. Kento faces off against TIE fighters for air superiority on the Kaliv dragon and comes out victorious due to the snowstorm, but the dragon is fatally shot and falls to the city outskirts, with Kento and Raiden jumping off last minute. Space battle of Oriana, Rixum and Valera working together to make quick work of Imperial Fighter Corporation. An Axe pilot takes on Rixum and Valera saves him, exposing her rear in the process. Valera is shot down and is later confirmed KIA. Amaya Ashford and Jex Rue have a rematch in the snow as the battle rages around them, a legendary duel that has Kento Nion eventually show up and join, which leads to the defeat of Ashford and she is killed. Carvos Vorhos and Maven Viros vs Eleanor Rose and Raiden Mavis plus Aiden Altruis. As Carvos is badly hurt and Maven loses her right arm, the pair of dark side hunters retreat via the Moff's Lambda. Malipion and Yella Irani control the forces to a victory, capturing the Imperial Moff in the Capitol building. This forces the reinforcements to surrender in order to protect their superior. Quickly the Imperial army would be arrested as the snowstorm lifted to a victorious rear. Kento sends fighter reinforcements via Imperial stolen bombers and they use that cover to get a direct bombing run on the Moff's ISD, disabling it. This prompts Imperial fear and the enemy fleet jumps away from the planet and into hyperspace. The battle for Rhea is won by Kento Nion and company. As the Imperials were being arrested, Kento would find Mali in the Capitol building. She would want to kill them off, but Kento would convince her that they couldn't currently as the Imperial forces weren't secured. Mali would fall into tears without an enemy to fight and Kento would comfort her. The fighters would land, which as Raiden and Oriana meet for the first time. This sparks an immediate love connection to the soulmates. Rixum reunites with his Mandalorians and shares the news of Valera's death to her master, Jex Ru, who is saddened by the news. Eleanor comforts him. The Valins are allowed to land their evacuee ships on the planet's surface and disembark, seeing a healthy jungle for the first time since the War of Kostiva. The Valin elders thank Kento for keeping his promise to them, which is the closest thing he gets to closure from his Kostiva arc. Kento and Oriana get a reunion at this point, which is loving but filled with grief in the air as the death of Kari Lee brought a rift between the pair. Rhea finally has its House 9 reformed and Kento is allowed to claim the Nion Fortress. From here, he would gather a military and a navy, as the Moff's ISD was being repaired as the first ship to the Jedi Lord's navy, of which he is finally proclaimed. Eleanor goes to find Kento and when she does, she sees Kento and Mali bonding over the loss of loved ones and their need to fight the Empire. This prompts a dual emotional state of happiness and sadness for Kento and she decides to leave them to it, catching up with Jex Ru, who is leaving to rebuild the Soama Temple. Raiden elects to stay, telling Eleanor that Kento offered to take him on as an apprentice. A happy goodbye. Raiden and Oriana wave off the boat of Jex and Eleanor, who had the body of Valera on it. Kento Nion and Mali would speak to the civilians of the capital city, and record the speech of Kento connecting with the people and of them calling out a new liberation, not of Rhea but the Quima sector entire. To a large applause, Raiden and Oriana stood behind Kento and Mali with the legacy Venator hovering in the sky above, a brief shot of the conquest to come. The end. Post-credit 1, a view of the Soama Temple rebuilt sometime later. We catch up briefly with Jex Ru, now the Supreme Soama. Then we get a close-up of Eleanor looking shocked and we reveal a medical scan, she is pregnant. Post-credit 2, Imperial Admiral Zinj speaks of the chaos revolving around the death of the Emperor and the growing threat of the Jedi Lord, a holomap showing that he had conquered multiple planets in the Quima sector. We then get Maven speaking up that he is dangerous. That's when Antinous Tremanes speaks up to Zinj, with an evil hype dialogue as Jeng Droga is revealed from the shadows.